everyone, Jane here. Thank you for watching today. I've decided today to do something a little bit different and use a medium that I don't use as often as I should. So I'm working in the Dina Wakley watercolour journal, and I've decided that I'm going to use my pan pastels today. So these are a soft pastel that are in a pan, so they're very sort of packed in there, which means that they're not quite as dusty as a lot of other pastels that you might see people use or even see myself use. And I'm applying a few different colours because I want to make a really industrial looking page, and I'm using the Sofft Tools. Now, I started off just by trying to cover the background with some, I think it was the Ultramarine blue tint and the Turquoise to start with. And then I decided to go in with some much thicker lines. And as I started doing the coverage this way, I decided I much preferred how this was looking. So the other colours I'm also using in this are burnt sienna and orange. So I'm really going for that sort of rusty patina-y look, and I just gradually build up the page with my different sponges until I'm happy with how it's looking. Now, as I said, the pan pastels, because of the way they are sort of a lot finer than other pastels, you don't necessarily have to seal them, especially if it's going in a book. But I decided to actually spray this double page spread with a couple of coats of Spectrafix, which is a much more friendlier, nature-friendly sealant for pastels and coloured pencils. And I just let that dry. It doesn't take too long. It's not too bad. And then once it had all totally dried, I decided to go in with some of a lighter pastel. This time it was the Turquoise tint, I do believe. And I just went through a stencil. Now, it's not showing up that much, but I just wanted to sort of to make 3 areas. I'd already at this point cut out my collage that I was going to use, and I knew roughly what I wanted to do. I'm sorry about my head keep popping in there. I think I was trying to I know what I was doing. I was blowing away the excess little bits because I decided that I would see what it was like using the pastels through these stencils. Now, these stencils are all from Be Crafty. They're in their Dinkables range. And as always, I will list what I have used in the description box below. I'll still say that I won't be putting links because some of the companies now that I use are no longer trading, or they may no longer have the products that I have because I'm using things from my stash. So I would always say use what you have, or I'm sure you can find alternatives. I wasn't sure if the pastel was going to work through the stencil, but it worked pretty well. And the only thing is, because it sort of catches on the edges, you do get a little bit of build up of the dust, and that's why you see me every now and again. It looks like I'm popping my head in and I'm just blowing the dust out of the way. Probably not the best way of doing it, but it was the quickest, and it wasn't much dust. I would say if you're using dusty products, maybe make sure you're in a nice, well ventilated area. Once I'd laid down as much pastel as I felt I needed in the background, I wanted to add a bit of stamping. So I'm using a couple of stamp sets from Lemon Creation. I'm using So Textured and Once Upon a Time. and I'm using these with Archival ink. Now, I've gone for colours that matched what was already in the background, and which I find is the best way, making sure I get a nice cohesive look. This one was spiced marmalade, and I realised as soon as I tried it a couple of times, it just was not stamping. So must have to check that ink pad. So instead, I went in with the vintage photo. Before that, I went in with the Evergreen Bough. I'm not sure if I already said that one. And then I looked for another colour to replace the fact I wasn't using the orange, and I went in with peacock feathers. So there's just a few different colours that matched in with what I have already put into the background. Once this part had been done, I gave it another spritz with the Spectrafix, just to make sure that I wasn't going to get too much movement when I got onto the sticking down of all of the collage. Now I'm using collage from the Little Personas and the Industrial Bits and Bobs books, and I'm using some washi tape to sort of seal that center part. Now on this particular page, I wasn't going to be doing anything that would have created any leakage, but a few of the pages I've noticed in this journal haven't got the nicest binding in between some of the pages. I noticed they look a bit tatty, so I wanted to cover up that tattiness. And then I also wanted to add on some of the tape to become like little grounding sections for my my collage, which I'd already decided was going into sort of like 3 little miniature pictures in themselves. So this is an idea for if you've got collage that's maybe quite small, but you want to do a bigger page, then sometimes rather than, you know, just always having to go for large collage, take some of those smaller ones and create like little clusters of collage instead of one big image. And that's what I was doing with this spread here. So I'm using the Liquitex Professional Matte Medium, and this was the point which I wasn't sure how this was going to react with that background. Even though I'd put that sealant on, sometimes, you know, that still might move, and actually it worked really well, and I didn't get too much movement with the pastels. I did notice a little tiny bit on my brush every now and again, but also I was being very careful when I added the matte medium to the page and to the collage that I wasn't really overdoing it and overworking it to make it move around too much. So I was really happy with how it looked. I wasn't sure at this point if I wanted to add any shading around my images, but in the end I thought, as I was really using the pan pastels for this page, I thought I would continue with that theme and just see how much I could do with these pastels. So I got out a slightly different tool that's a little bit more shaped, a little bit more finer for more fine detail. And I'm just decided to use it with some of the burnt sienna and the turquoise to add a little bit of shading around parts of the images, just to take a little bit of the brightness from around the main focal points, but also then to just give the sentiment a little bit of shading as well, because I had, for a change, added that on at the same time as all of the collage. And this worked really quite well. And because it is such a smudgeable type of product, you can also go in, and if you get too much in one place, just using your finger to smudge it out. The other thing about pastels is that on the whole they are also water reactive, so you can water them out, which you will see me do a little bit in a moment. Now, once I had done this, all that was left to do was add some splatters. I have to say I had forgotten to dry off the watery bits, so I did get a bit of an interesting look to some of the splatters, but I used the calligraphy ink from Winsor & Newton in a sepia colour. And that is just about it from me. So thank you ever so much for watching today. If you have enjoyed this video, do please give it a thumbs up. And give it a like. If you aren't already subscribed, I'd love it if you would hit that subscribe button. And at the end of the video, I give a great big shout out to my lovely super supporters. A big thank you to them for their ongoing support, and I will put information in the description box below if becoming a YouTube member is something that you would be interested in. So until the next time, thank you very much, and bye bye.